and current sort of happenings around us. But today's slightly different. I'm going to be talking about our thoughts. We're going to be analyzing how we think and addressing our limiting beliefs. And with that, it will actually help us address how we make decisions. Because I think that basically uncovers and it's an umbrella for all the topics that we've been talking about. And I do have a special guest with me today, a personal favorite of mine, and she's amazing with regards to what she does for people. So she was also here to help me. Remember, this is a live call-in show. Please do call in with any comments and questions. You have two live coaches here today, but just for tonight, you have the amazing Uzma Naqvi. Assalamu alaikum, Uzma. Okay, Assalamu alaikum, how are you?
Alaikum assalam. Very well, thank you. How are you?
Very well. It's so lovely to see you here today, and I'm really, really honored, and I'm so, so happy to have you on the show. As I was saying, Uzma is the founder of Club 313 and the director for UN Life Coaching. She has done amazing work in the community, and she has got amazing background knowledge with regards to helping individuals as well as the community as a whole. So with today's topic, normally I have topics around the fact that we're talking and discussing of certain issues. And this is a big issue because this covers almost all the topics that we normally talk about. So it's analyzing our limiting beliefs. Can you slightly describe for the audience, what does that mean? We're not talking religious beliefs here. Now we're talking and we're getting into more psychology, the mind, and, the way in which we think, behave. So could you give a brief sort of description of what do we mean by limiting beliefs?
Sure. So firstly, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's lovely to be here. Always nice to see you. Yes, I think it's such an amazing topic that we all need to have some form of background knowledge about, because we can quite easily get into a spiral of thoughts that are negative, and they can consume our lives in such a hefty way that if we're not mindful of what we're thinking and how we're dealing with life, then it can lead to some really serious issues like depression and anxiety and stress, and you're in that mode and frame of mind all of the time. So it's really important for us to kind of start to look deeply into how we think. So that's why I think this is such an important topic for all of us to know something about. So limiting beliefs, excuse me, is more about sort of why you think a certain way, when these where do these thoughts come from in the first place. So what I want to touch on, and to just give you a baseline of how we will work today, is especially talk about the CBT triangle. So talking about the cognitive behavioral triangle and how that impacts. So how our thoughts generate our feelings, and how our feelings then have an impact on what we think. So everything that we put out in our life, everything that we do is all to do with how we're thinking. So the baseline and the foundation of how we're living our lives and how we're showing up and how we're making decisions and how everything's happening in our lives is primarily to do with our thoughts. And limiting beliefs is the pivotal point, basically. And those thoughts are basically planted into our minds from a very, very young age. And this is something that a lot of people aren't really aware of. So I just wanted to kind of delve deep into that subject a little bit more today with yourself.
Thank you for that opening line there. That's really important. So just to summarize, firstly, I just want to welcome the Syed. Assalamu alaikum, Syed. Assalamu alaikum, Syed. Can you hear me? Okay, until we get some sort of sound from our Syed, then we will actually include him into the discussion. Assalamu alaikum, Syed. Can you hear me? No, he's not able to hear us. I'm really sorry about the technical issues that we're having today. I just want to say that from what Uzma has outlined is the fact that we have assumptions in our minds.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Assalamu alaikum, Syed. Can you hear me? I can hear you, but I don't think you can hear me. Okay, so until the Sayed is able to hear me, we're gonna obviously continue with this discussion. So as we were talking about the limiting beliefs, it's really basically an assumption that people have around their futures, whatever beliefs they have. An example is, I can never be successful in life, or I can never make money because only rich people are in a particular way or working in a particular way. I could never have that relationship that is, outstanding because it's not happening. And that this can stem from many, many reasons, whether or not we've witnessed it and model these kind of things from our families, parents, whether even if it's not from a young age, but we've had enough experience or thoughts and stories along, our lifespans that we can actually sort of, hear these stories and believe these stories. And even if it's not logical, even if it's not reality, we make it our reality and we give it that meaning and we stick to it. So that's just basically what Uzma, has been trying to outline with regards to understanding what is our limiting beliefs and how damaging that is. But obviously, she's got a line of ways in which she's going to be describing it and explaining this. So I'd leave it to you. What more would you like to add with regards to limiting beliefs? You did mention the CBT triangle. What is that exactly?
So I think that's the reason I started with that was I think it's really important for us to realize where it stems, how it all kind of starts, and if we can just kind of pinpoint how damaging these thoughts can be, then and if we understand how it affects our daily lives, then perhaps we can be a bit more aware of what we're thinking and how that's impacting us. So Savage Triangle is more about if you imagine a triangle, right at the top of the triangle, if you think about your thoughts, like whatever you're generating in your mind at all times. And every single thought that you're having is having an impact emotionally inside of you. So it's creating some form of a feeling, something that is having an impact inside of you, right? And because you're feeling a certain way, you are going to be behaving a certain way too, in accordance to those feelings. So it correlates with one another very deeply. So the reason I wanted to mention that to begin with was because if we can get ourselves to think about the top of the triangle and be more aware of what we're thinking on a daily basis while we're washing up, while we're driving, while we're doing whatever it is we're doing. We could be having an argument with somebody that, an incident that happened 20 years ago, or we could be reliving an argument that happened yesterday. So we kind of constantly have this inner debates that are going on in our minds. And because we're not aware of them, because we don't really pay that much attention to them, but they are constantly generating feelings within us. And that's how we then put ourselves out. So if we're in the middle of that kind of internal argument, then if our toddler comes along and we're snappy at them all of a sudden because they've spilt something or whatever, we may have dealt with it very slightly differently if we were more mindful of what we're thinking and how that's impacting our feelings. So it's more about being aware of your thoughts and what that's doing to you in terms of your inner feelings and how you're putting yourself out. But I think it's also important. I wanted to mention about your brain and how we actually utilize our brain, and that will give you a little bit more baseline of why we think certain things. So if you think about our brain and our conscious mind and our subconscious mind, it's quite shocking for people to learn sometimes that we use only 5% of our conscious
Mm,
mind to make our daily life decisions. And that's quite a staggering stat, to think that 95% of everything we do, all the decisions we make, all the habits that we have, all the skill sets we have, everything that we do, all the associative memories and the beliefs and the attitudes and the behaviors and the perceptions that we have are all deriving from our subconscious mind. And this is something that if we're not aware of it, we think we're very aware, we think we're very conscious, and we think we're using our conscious mind. But in actual fact, we're not. It's all coming from our subconscious mind. And the reason that's important is because the subconscious mind is stored. It has tons of information from when you were, even before you were born. but primarily from when you were born. And if we look at our ages from 0 to 7, I think it's really important for us to know what kind of brain waves that we have and how we soak up information. So if you think about a toddler, for example, I keep giving toddler because I have a toddler I'm living with at the moment, and everything is a why. But why? But why does this happen? Because they're so intrigued and so interested in what's happening. And the reason for that is because they're in that brain waves of, it's called alpha brain level, where they're actually soaking up all the information. They're like a sponge. They're taking everything in. But what we don't realize is that whatever they're taking in at that time is being stored in the subconscious mind at all times. And if we're told certain things in that age, especially, I mean, now parenting has become a very big thing, and there's a lot of courses and a lot of things, and we're very conscious about how we parent. But a couple of decades ago, this wasn't a thing. This, we just, children were born and they were in the house and they kind of just grew up. Yeah, and as long as they were fed and they were watered, and as long as they had clothing on their back, it was all good. We were good parents. But things have drastically changed now, and the reason I just want to bring our consciousness to this, that if while we're growing up, if while in that young age, when we don't really have that much of an impact of or decision making, we can't really decide what we're surrounded by, who is around us, what kind of things we're consuming in terms of hearing and eating and sleeping and everything that's going on around us. We don't really have that much of a control. Now think about at that age from 0 to 7, what is being said to us, especially back then, where it was could be very normal for a household to say, "You're such a stupid person. You're so silly for doing this. Oh, you're putting on weight. You're getting so fat." And all of these things that we hear just as an off the cuff kind of a statement that just somebody makes, an uncle or a parent or just an older sibling or whatever. It doesn't seem that serious because you're just talking to a child, and soon they're going to forget about it. But what we don't realize is, in actual fact, we're planting those beliefs in a child at that time. And those beliefs then become the foundation of everything we're operating from there on. And as we go on and on and on in life, all we're doing is we're collecting evidences from here and there and everywhere to solidify those beliefs that we already hold in our minds. So it doesn't have to be a traumatizing childhood. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've had a very difficult childhood. It could just be a very innocent incident that happened, or something even happening on TV, and you just happen to be sat there watching a program that's happening in the background, but you're still perceiving that information, you're still storing that information in. And I think it's really important for us to be so much more mindful of what we're what we're putting out there for our children to see. But this is not just about children. I mean, if whatever you carry as your beliefs, as your foundational beliefs, whether that's to do with money, that money doesn't grow on trees, that's a common one, right? A lot of us have grown up with money doesn't grow on trees. Or if we think about relationships, or I always end up with people like that. I always end up with, people always mistreat me. These are the kind of things that we just hold on to in our minds because we've had some sort of information that's been passed on to us from a very, very young age. And because we're holding on to them throughout our lives, we've collected lots of different evidences, and we've wired ourselves to think that way and really believe that, because our mind constantly goes back to what's familiar. It constantly refers back to whatever's in here. So every time we come across another incident, maybe you failed a driving test, or maybe you've gone for a job interview and you were rejected, or you didn't do so well in an exam, or somebody has made a comment about your appearance. The minute we hear anything that's even slightly in accordance to our belief system, your brain instantly pings at you and says, "See, told you that's true." So it kind of tells you at all times, it's collecting evidence, and it kind of stacking up evidence all of the times to really hardwire those feelings and those beliefs at all times. And this is why it's so dangerous, because if we're operating 95% of ourselves on subconscious mind, and then we're collecting evidence at all times to solidify those beliefs, then imagine how we're putting, how, think about how that correlates with our current life, with our current circumstances, with the kind of arguments we end up having, with the kind of relationship we're having, with the
Yeah.
kind of, whatever's happening in our lives is very, very much in line with what's going on in here, in the background.
Sure. Thank you so much. So far, you've highlighted a lot and you've given our audience so much food for thought. If you do want to call in, please do so on the number below your screen to speak to the Syed or myself. Salamu alaikum, Syed. How are you? He still can't hear me. Oh, that's such a shame. I really wanted his input today. I just wanted to say as well that a lot of us are not actually taking care with regards to our self-development. And as you kept mentioning that we have to be aware of this, but especially in our communities, we just grow up.
Can you hear me?
No,
Alaikum assalam. Hi,
we can
Faizan,
hear
just now.
you, but you can't hear us, Sayed. I can hear you, but you can't hear me. Okay, I'm trying to I don't know any sort of sign languages, but unfortunately, yes, this is just something that has been for the last couple of shows, but we've had it, running. But yeah, so as I was saying, we do not actually have anyone in our
I can
community.
hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Assalamu
Oh,
alaikum.
brilliant.
I really wanted to include you. I was hoping that you were actually listening to me. How are you today, Sayed? Can you hear me? It's probably on and off. Sayed,
Yeah, it
can
seems
you hear me?
intermittent.
No, he can't hear me. Okay,
Alhamdulillah. How are you?
I'm fine. Okay, I think there's just a slight delay.
There's a
So
delay.
while you can hear me, could you
It
sort of
keeps cutting. Yeah, but it's on and off. It's on and off.
Okay, well, it's your internet that's cutting right now because you're breaking up for me. I just want to say that it's really
It's a
important.
long, it's a long delay.
Okay, I'll speak slowly and hopefully you can hear me. In our communities, Sayed, we don't necessarily take the road of self development. And we do have a lot of research with science and the Quran. But do you think that we need to do more with regards to psychology and Quran? Because everything that I remember learning with regards to, just something simple like mindfulness, even, or manifestation or law of attraction, like I sort of like translate that as tawakkul, for example, having that trust and belief. Do you think that we are doing enough, or we as Muslims in our community are actually understanding our psychology and correlating that with the teachings of our faith? I'm just giving him a few seconds in case.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Well, psychology in the modern terms is a new subject, but we cannot deny and say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, uh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He prescribed the rules of our code of life for us, did not take care of the psychological issues. He is our creator, and he knows better what is right and wrong for us. Although in the modern life, we say that people need psychological treatment, and they need to.
Oh, unfortunately, we lost him. He's frozen. Okay, but from what I can gather is that it could be something, do you think, that is new, Uzma, or do you think that it's because now that we just have the awareness with our technology, that we are understanding the human mind more, and there is actually a need for us in our communities to actually improve ourselves, and with all the issues that are happening around us, like all the topics that I've addressed, it does come down to a psychological sort of like infection or issue. So what is your thoughts on that? Because as you kept mentioning before, that we have to be aware, but I know I couldn't be aware unless I actually undergone some sort of like self-development course myself, or took on the studies, or took on the learning. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked this. I was really hoping this would be one of the questions because I think it's so important to address this. You know, I couldn't emphasize enough that we have the background knowledge of how to take care of our minds and how to become mindful. All these terminologies that we have now, like mindfulness and gratitude, and all of these different things that we're learning from non-believers. You know,
Yeah,
there is a little bit of a story that I just want to share here. I was really ready to go to Hausa studies, and I was all set, and I'd done all the background sort of research, and you know, even knew where I was going to go and stay. And under this commute from where I live to London to do this on a weekly basis, and life took a turn, and I couldn't actually go to do that, and life coaching came into my lap. It was something that was just meant to be, and I'm so glad that it did. But you know, as I've gone more and more into self development and learned more and more about this subject, I just cannot believe how much of this is actually Islam, and how much of this isn't explained to us from
mm,
our pulpits in that way. And so it doesn't, you know, the way it's put out from the non-believers is far more enticing and far more kind of interesting to learn more about, because it does feel like you're improving yourself, and it doesn't have that sort of, I don't know, I mean, maybe our youth have that kind of you know, at certain ages, particularly in teenage years, they kind of sometimes have that no entry sign when it comes to religion, or they don't really want to have something that's heavy on religion, because they're exploring, they're finding out about themselves, they're kind of more interested in their look, and they're more interested in what kind of car they want to buy, and they're more interested in what kind of watch they want to own, and it's very much about the material life, right? So I don't think that we as a community really emphasize that enough, to say that actually your self-development is exactly what Islam is. And it's beautifully put in the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you, and I'm paraphrasing, that know yourself so that you can know me. You cannot get to God without getting into yourself. And the reason when self-development came to me, and as I started exploring this into more and more, my whole business model is based on one quote of Imam Ali salam, and I, you know, I could not, you know, emphasize enough how beautiful that is, and why I went into this more and more deeper. The quote of Imam Ali Islam, which I can't read all of it, but it's basically the one that says, "You think you're a small entity, but within you is the whole universe." Right? And at the time, I remember being in a very dark place in my life. I remember not feeling good internally, right? And it made me question, where is the universe inside me? And this is the man I'm supposed to be following. This is the man that I'm supposed to be believing in. This is the man that I take everything from about my life, right? So how is it that he says there's a whole universe inside you, but I feel nothing inside of me? I don't feel like I have anything to contribute to this world, to my life, to anybody around me. And so the more I delved deep into that, the more doors opened, the more my mind started kind of getting so excited about, wow, what is this world? So I really want to put this message out to anybody and everybody out there. There literally isn't enough emphasis in our communities to say self-development is not just an option. It's not something you can, it's not a nice to have thing, right? I was actually having a conversation with a psychologist just yesterday. We ended up talking about you know, coaching and psychotherapy, and obviously there is a difference between the two. One talks about hurt and past and how to heal from whatever. You know, therapy is a very deep subject, and obviously if you're going through things like suicidal attempts and things like that, very serious stuff, of course you need a psychologist who's going to be able to help you and go through the therapy. But coaching is a very different ballgame in many ways. It does overlap at some points, but it's different. That it looks at empowering your current situation, you out of your current situation. It looks at
mm,
really telling you what you have inside of you, so that you can really get out of the current stuck situation you're in, and get out of there and really put yourself out and make the life happen that you absolutely have the potential to make. Right? So what this person I was talking to said, you know, all these life coaches popping up from anywhere and everywhere. What is somebody who's very learned and very prominent, and you know, understands the background of what psychology is supposed to be all about, right? But what the reason I bring that up is because there still isn't enough education out there about what this whole phenomenon is about. And I really think that it needs to be there everywhere. I think everyone can do with a life coach, because imagine somebody empowering you, imagine somebody being accountable for you. Because what do we, in our everyday life, let's take one subject, for example, trying to lose weight. This is a big one. Everybody, a lot of people are stuck with that. You know, you make all these plans 3 times a week. That's it. I'm going to go to the gym. There's nothing stopping me now. And then come week 2, you're like, I'll miss today. I'll go again next week. And then come week 3, you're kind of already, you've given up on the thing. Knowing that it's good for you, knowing that it's actually going to make you a better person, knowing that you're going to get more energy, knowing that it's a fantastic thing for you to do. Why are you not able to do it? What's actually stopping you? And this is what goes back to your limiting beliefs. There's something planted in there from a way back then, and you need to really have somebody empower you to undo all of that and redo what's actually empowering. So take away the disempowering things, plant in the empowering ones, and make those your new habits, right? And often we need help to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think in our community there's a lot of sort of things that as soon as you mention something like therapy or coaching, the first answer you get is, there's nothing wrong with me, I'm not mental. And it's like, you don't have to be mental to learn about self-development. It's part of who you are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invites you to be better in yourself. Imam Ali Islam says, and again I'm paraphrasing, and inshallah Syed can tell me correct quote, but something like, if you're today is not better than what it was yesterday, any day that you've improved yourself, that's your Eid. Yeah, what does that mean? Eid, what do we do on Eid? We're celebrating, we're happy, right? So if we're not getting better, months can go by and we're doing nothing to better ourselves. Years go by and we have these Tomorrowlands that we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that, and we have all these amazing plans. The ideas are all there, and we're all kind of geared up to do things, but there is always something right in the middle of it to block it, to say, not today, because so and so and so. And that's what our limiting beliefs are, and they really need to be taken out of the root and planted with the new ones.
Thank you. That was beautifully said. And again, I want to apologize, Sayed. Thank you for so much for your patience and coming back to us. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Can you hear me now, Sayed?
Yes, I mean, I'm noticing that it's a very long delay. When I speak to you, you hear it quite long after I've finished.
Yes, I waited last time, but unfortunately, then you froze. But inshallah, we can have your say a little bit further. We're talking about our communities not understanding their self development, because that is actually part of them learning more about their actual foundation, their actual meaning and purpose in life. And that's what it's really about. Because if people understood what is actually, even for example, like Uzma mentioned about life coaching and sort of therapy, life coaches are there for everyday people with everyday issues. I always kind of paraphrase it in that way. So you don't have to, feel that you need fixing or anything like that. So people are not understanding that at all. But to have someone there like a coach, like you would have, for your training physically, you have that for your mindset. You have someone you can trust. Do you think that in our mosques and centers, we are actually giving that sort of guidance to people to actually seek outside assistance so that they can actually live their optimal life? Because there are many mental sort of issues right now, not just amongst the adults but even amongst the youngsters, and that is really detrimental because things are being left for too long. What is your thoughts on that, Sayed?
Yes, I mean, definitely, because if the center should not feel reluctant to introduce people to psychotherapists or psychologists, and the community be educated. There are narrations in which our Prophet Muhammad and holy Imams used to say, "May Allah bless the person who knows who he is, where he is, and where he is going to end up." So one of the aims of our life is to know. I mean, Quran and Islamic teachings encourage us to discover ourselves, and this training should start first of all from the youngsters, and then those youngsters should be trained enough to then bring up their family with the same education. So it's especially in the non-Muslim world, it's the responsibility of the Islamic centers and the community centers to first of all train young couple, give them sessions and lessons to discover themselves and recognize who they are, where they are, and where they are going to end up, and what is the aim of their life. If we can answer, according to narrations, if we can answer these four questions: who we are, where we are, where are we going to go, and what is the purpose of our life, then we can sort out many of our uh, problems. And this, unfortunately, our centers are more inclined to invite speakers who just praise Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam, but don't give the teachings of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salatu wasalam. Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam did not want us to just praise them and mention them and beat our chest or just sing songs for them. They wanted us to practice their teachings in our life. And these are part of their teachings, to discover ourselves, who we are.
Thank you so much. That was so enlightening and refreshing. I was just hoping that the Syed would come in because he always gives that point of view, which I can never ever put into words so eloquently. So thank you so much, Syed. That was brilliant. It is so important that we understand that it's more than just our rituals today. It is understanding our mind, our human behavior, and our psychology. Even if we're not psychologists ourselves, there are people out there, like life coaches, especially now, that's filling the gap. So in between that stage of you being detrimental, in between that stage of you actually getting to a stage where you are going to be having, severe anxiety, depression, before you are doing that, if you are already just tolerating something or feeling a little bit upset or feeling a little bit uncomfortable, that's when you go and seek that help, and don't wait and don't delay. That's when you will have to see someone a little bit more with regards to the therapy sort of way, and not necessarily it's going to, it's going to be a lot harder for you. So that's what my point was, and that's what Uzma was saying as well, which is really, really important. And obviously, our Sayyid eloquently has put that into perspective as well from the Islamic point of view. So, Uzma, I mean, when it comes to us as individuals trying to find ourselves, again, it does affect our decision making process. And as we know, we're having so many issues in our communities about what decisions we make, because those are the decisions that actually, fill that road ahead of us. So when we are, trying to analyze and understand, acknowledge our limiting beliefs, and then trying to work to maybe change those habits, what is the process?
So I think it's firstly I couldn't have put it better. The way Sayed explained that was so beautifully done,
Exactly.
and especially bringing in, this is the whole point, isn't it? Bringing in the Islamic aspect into our everyday lives, because Islam is a way of life, and often when we separate the two and when we focusing on one or the other, we feel like there's no sort of correlation between the two. But it's really, really important for us to understand that actually everything we're doing in our lives is directly to do with how we're living, and that's Islam, because it's a way of life. So thank you so much, Sayed, for putting that out so beautifully. That was lovely. But in terms of the limiting beliefs, I think what we don't understand, like I just want to share a little story here. So there was actually a study done in an elementary school in California called the Pygmalion effect or something like that. So this study was basically where there was a bunch of teachers that were told that these new students that have joined the school, there are 20 students, and those 20 students are absolutely exceptionally amazing and intelligent,
I've
right?
heard this,
So
yes.
that's yeah. So that's all they were told. There was no background to anything else, and those teachers weren't supposed to have any different sort of way to deal with them. They weren't actually able to share this information. It's just something that they knew about, right? That was it. And once so they came into the classes as normal. They weren't treated anything differently, and only these teachers knew this information. But in actual fact, those students were no different than any of the students in the school. They were just average students. And what happened was they went through the whole year, and then when they did the exams at the end of the year, those precise 20 students ended up being exceptionally good. And so that study really revealed something about knowing something about someone and expecting something from someone, right? So what we need to understand is that in our everyday life, like we need to understand our actions towards others, right? Because that has a direct impact on others' beliefs about us, right? So it has a connection, and then that causes others to like their actions towards us, right? So it kind of works back itself, and then that reinforces our beliefs about ourselves, and then that then influences our actions back towards others. So it's like a full-on cycle of what happens. And so if we can have an expectation of greatness from people
Mm.
around us, if we can
For
have that
every,
change of
mm,
mentality in our own selves, right? If we can empower ourselves to disconnect ourselves from negativity and not get involved in toxicity and stay away from it, in the sense, I mean, sometimes it's actually hard because you can't cut off people from your life. It's not easy to just say, well, this person is a detrimental person, they're negative, so we're just going to leave them where they are. Sometimes you can, and actually you should, if you have the ability and if you have no obligation Islamically towards them, you should walk away from friendships like that because they don't serve you. They're actually, you're the average of 5 people that you're surrounded by. If you're spending a lot of time with people that are toxic, people that are bad for you, then it is having an impact. So either you're influencing them or they're influencing you, and chances are that the negativity is rising, and that's what you're following. But so if there is a chance, cut off from people like that. But that's not always really the first option, right? Because sometimes these people, we're obliged to know them, to have connections with them. But you can't choose how you react to them. You can't choose. It's within your own sort of remit to be sort of have the blueprint of your thought system, have the discipline to be in a mindful state of what your thoughts, what you're planting in here, and how that's making you feel, and then how you're projecting yourself back out in the world. So it's a full-on cycle, and I think we just need to be so much more aware of how we're impacting ourselves on a daily basis. You know, the whole thing about forgiveness, and we get that again, we get that from the non-believers, like letting go and the levels of consciousness, and letting go of the negative things, and being able to forgive if you've been wronged, and even if there hasn't been an apology. Like, how is it that we get this information from people who are, maybe atheists, they have no religion, but they have understood that for your own betterment, for your own salvation, for your own sort of growth, it is good for you. You're serving yourself more than you're serving anybody else, to let go of the past hurt, let go of the people who've hurt you, give them the chance in terms of just cleaning that slate and saying, I forgive. Gurbatan ilallah, and then let God, because we're very judgmental. We're very easy to sort of jump on the bandwagon of so and so did this back then, maybe 20 years ago, and we're still holding on to it like dear life. Like, we can't let go of that. If I'm good to him now, that's it. He's going to think I'm a pushover. And we have this ego thing going on inside of ourselves. And we're being trained by, again, non believers to say, let go of your ego, be humble, start your day with gratitude. So all of these things have, a direct impact on how we are on a daily basis. If we're not mindful, if we don't have an intention of what kind of a day we're going to have, if we don't have an intention of what kind of relationships we want to have, if we're not intentional about our thoughts, then of course we're going to get into that negative spiral, which we can't pull ourselves out. And often, if we end up staying in that spiral for too long, then we are gearing ourselves towards depression. And sometimes, people can fake themselves out of that by taking pills, for example, and releasing certain types of hormones in their brains, and just for the temporary time, making themselves feel like, oh, I'm okay now, I'm in a better place. Things are okay. But if you're not understanding the core issues, and if you're not really understanding the foundational things that are wrong and that are rocky, then those depression episodes are going to keep recurring because you haven't dealt with what's underlaying, right? And that's got nothing to do with you being mental. I think that people need to understand that self-development is all about evolving and gaining closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and leading a better life. So it's a win-win. You're having a great life here because you're able to really have those conversations with yourself and others around you. But then you're also having a spiritual experience at the same time, and getting that depth of relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you're able to let go of things that have been difficult, things that have been hurting you for so long, and you have been able to empower yourself to let go of those emotions, and you choose your emotional reactions, you choose your emotional home, you choose your emotional state, right? Because your state of mind has a massive impact on how you are in your daily life.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. It's really interesting to hear you speak, actually. I wish I could continue for much longer, but we are coming towards the end of the show. And before we do, I just want some final thoughts from you, Syed, with regards to us understanding our psychology and how much more do we need to do in our communities, because I think there is a real problem. And as we hear constantly, there are issues with families, broken homes, and adolescents that are not actually conforming to the way of the Ahlebait because it's seen so distant to what is everyday life. But as Uzma has highlighted, that what is outside spoken by the non-believers are exactly what we believe, but we're not actually hearing this. So what is your final thoughts in about a minute or so, just to like quickly take away?
Yeah, yeah, I will quickly quote two narrations. Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam, used to say, we need to move on in our life.
Mm.
Past, good or bad, is gone, and long distance future is not here. What we have is present. So we have to take advantage of the present, and I'm sure this is the psychologists and the counselors tell the people who are having problems to move on from the past and don't get involved too much in the future, and try to enjoy the present that they have, present health, present circumstances. They are not going to come again and again for you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala very clearly in Quran says that Allah even doesn't change people. People have to change themselves. So the first step has to be taken by us. If
Mhm.
we need change in our life, we need to change. We need to take the first step. Then Allah Subhanahu wa Taala will help us.
Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Again, even though we had less opportunity with time, but your quantity was, maybe less, but the quality was excellent as usual. So it's amazing to have you on the show, Sayed. And again, thank you so much, Uzma. Inshallah, I definitely want to have you back again at some point because I feel like we've already touched the surface on this topic and we can go a lot deeper. But thank you so much for both of you for your time, your input. Thank you, dear viewers, for listening. I hope that this was vital. I didn't want to bring on a topic that was different for this time round, so that hopefully it will actually make a difference for anything that you're facing right now. So inshallah, do seek the help. Do actually take advice from somebody who's professional.